Oh, hi. Oh, yeah, there we are.
Hi.
Hello.
That was the first iPhone in the last television show for Jessica.
It was her last ever TV appearance, correct? You were telling me
It
this last
was.
night.
Well, you have a great story about what happened on that set.
Oh,
Not that story.
I would like to hear that
you want
story.
to hear the story? It was cool. It was the scene at which hotel was that again?
St.
Kevin?
Francis.
The St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco. And me and Jessica, I remember after we did one scene with her, I said to Alex and Kevin, I said, who cast this girl? This girl is really special and has this amazing quality, and she's going to be a star, and good on you for casting her. And we were chatting, and we got on like a house on fire, Jessica and I. And during that scene where she meets her father, she gets a phone call on her mobile, and she's like completely, all the color drains out of her face. And I was like, "What's wrong?" She said, "I've just got this audition, Kevin, for this film called The Tree of Life, and I'm terrified. I've got to meet the director and all this stuff." And I just kind of pep talked her and sat her down and said, "Look, you're amazing. Just go in there and be yourself, and have you can't control it. We're just actors, and what will be, but just have all the confidence in her." And it was just amazing just to see from that moment what has then transpired.
She was the first guest star. That was the first episode after the pilot. So, right? Third?
Second episode. Well, I don't understand that.
Thank you.
That doesn't make sense to me. How can it be the second after the...
If we do the DVD in America, can you be on it? She was one of the first guest stars, but she was the first guest star we read on that episode. And Robert Ulrich, who's gone on to cast Glee and all of Ryan Murphy's shows, said, "I got this actress. She's from Marin County. She just did a movie with Robert De Niro, and I think she's special." And she came in and she read, I think, that first scene when she's meeting her father. And of course, she teared up. And I remember thinking, oh, she's just passing through. This is somebody special. But I had no idea she'd be like an Oscar winner.
So, okay, Oh,
hi, Dan, sorry.
In my scenario, Dan Vassar goes back to 2007, and he's able to talk to certain NBC executives about maybe not canceling Journeyman. And that means that we're actually here today celebrating the start of the 9th season this fall. So, in your mind,
Surprise.
what does season 9 of Journeyman look like?
Question.
It's funny. That was a really hard show to break because time travel, as you can imagine, there's the whole time continuum, and you do one little thing, it affects everything else. They were really hard to break. I almost feel like in some way, and it was hard for me after the show went down, is that it only meant to live 13 episodes of 24. And as much as I think we would have done just fine, it forced us to pull a lot of things up. And we kind of knew our fate very early, that the ratings weren't great. So we pulled up story and we thought, let's think of what the finale is going to be. So, but if we would have got to season 9, I'm sure Charlie Weiss and the little kid would have been a time traveler. By the way, didn't it feel like the beginning, like we were looking at the auditions for Grey's Anatomy for Kevin with delivering a baby? But I don't know. That's episode 9. Episode 2, I do know where we were going to go at the end of the first season with this whole idea of everybody that he saved, we're going to play some role at the end of the season to some end of the world scenario, I'm sure. But who knows?
And did you get as far as pitching that to the NBC brass?
We pitched it to the NBC brass, and I'll never forget it because before the season started, we pitched it. Then they came in like 2 weeks after we were in the writer's room. And I said, okay, here's the deal. These guys are Rube Goldberg. At the end, there's this virus, and they got to stop it. And they go, whoa, stop right there. Heroes is doing that. And so we had to start from scratch. So maybe it was better that we didn't get to 22 episodes.
Well, 2007 NBC was, and apologies, Kevin, for the pun here, it was kind of a fall of Rome time at NBC. And the executive who developed the show, he was released from duty a couple weeks after you guys were picked up.
Kevin Riley, correct.
So how did that impact the development of the show going forward, the new people coming in, just what was happening at NBC at that slightly pre-Jay Leno show moment?
You're right. That did not help. Kevin Riley bought the show in July when we were actually starting to shoot it. He took the job at Fox, and we had Ben Silverman, who heart didn't seem to be in the job, and so we had no real love there. But we also had we were a 20th Studios show for NBC, and all the other shows were NBC Universal. So all the other shows, except for Bionic Woman, got a second season, even though Life and Journeyman had similar ratings. But because NBC didn't really own us, we didn't get it. And people think it was the strike. The strike actually kept the show on the air, because after 5 episodes, they would have probably canceled us. But because they had nothing after it, they had to air all of our episodes. And it was in the middle of that season where people like you managed to keep it alive. The ratings climbed without any kind of promotion. So it was kind of a little miracle, but I'm glad everyone saw it.
Now for Kevin McKidd. You're playing a character who is pretty much clueless at every step of the way what's happening. And that's sort of an interesting state for the hero of a show to be in, to have so little kind of agency at any given moment. Does that make it easier for you to play, or are you pestering other Kevin, constantly trying to know more than your character?
It's a good question. I mean, did I ever pester you? I think I pestered you a lot, right?
Well, you were in every scene, so you were kind of subtly saying that you needed some time off. But you had asked. No, he worked so hard. By the way, he was really sick in a couple of those scenes in that episode. He was super sick
for most of this episode.
Yeah, and yet he's such a pro that you can't tell the difference. But no, you would want answers, understandably, that you'd want to know where the season's going, and but you were supposed to be kept in the dark, so you kind of you couldn't know.
Yeah, I think that's what I loved about when I read the script, the original pilot, was I was like, this is, because I had just come off of a TV show called Rome for HBO, and I was getting thrown a lot of offers, which is rare and a very a meaningful moment in any actor's life, where suddenly they're getting offered stuff. But a lot of the stuff I was being offered was, sort of man of action, similar stuff. Cops, American cops who've got a gun and got all the power and can interrogate people and stuff. And I just, for some reason, I personally wasn't attracted by any of those projects. But this pilot, one of the things I loved about it was how smart it was, how much of a kind of, I remember one of the things we first talked about, Kevin, was that there's a real romance story in the right at the heart of this show, and this amazing triangle, kind of quadrangle really, with Reed Diamond's character. And also the fact that, again, you have this protagonist who knows nothing, and is searching. And one of my favorite films of all time is The Searchers, partly just because of the title. And I think that really attracted me, the fact that he was really, searching desperately to try and keep his life together, his wife and his kid together and intact. And there was real stakes there, and I thought in a really smart, interesting, very human way. So it was a science fiction show that felt very domestic in a strange way.
Yeah, it was an intimate show. I was always interested in what would happen to the family if you had a time traveler that was gone without explanation. And that's one thing I wonder, if the show, and believe me, don't get me wrong, I was so upset when it was canceled, and I really believed in it. It was the highlight of my career. I would have loved to explore that, but if it got bigger, would it lose that intimacy? And even especially in the early episodes, you really feel that, and I wonder if it would have lost something.
Yeah, but it might have done. It might have become a bit more event-oriented, and I think it would have lost some of the... I think it's a really special show. I mean, watching this episode today, it reminded me how you wrote the hell out of this, and really... I mean, I don't know if you agree, but I think the writing is just beautiful. And Alex Graves directed the hell out of it, this episode. And it looks like a really smart movie, you know? And that's what great television is doing now. And I think this show was kind of one of those first shows of the new wave of TV shows that are kind of besting movies nowadays, I think.
And you mentioned the romance, and I remember watching the pilot, and the thing that struck me most was that you get to the end of the pilot, and Katie finds out. And so it doesn't have to be an ongoing struggle of will she find out, will she believe him, will she not? At the end of the very first episode, she's close, and then she's closer. But there isn't a long process where it's, secrets being kept and anything like that. How much did you have to fight to avoid that obvious drama?
It wasn't really a fight because I think that, like you, we all sense that the audience is going to get tired of that. And that's why we wanted to actually do it early. Like Friendly Skies is like, well, let's give them something where it's undeniable. I mean, she was on a plane, he went into the bathroom, he never came out. So that we needed an event like that Katie goes, okay, I'm all in, something big is going on here. And you're right. And the same thing with like Reed Diamond's character, I think episode 8 or 9 learns and finally believes it. You need those people to come in out of the dark or that just gets old real quick.
Just the network model is so driven by secret keeping. That's like the easiest way to produce drama, and that was not the way you guys decided to go, which I think is.
That's I would like to say that I fought so hard for it, but I didn't really fight very hard at all.
Now,
but thank you.
The other thing that I think is interesting and insightful for me was that remember you telling me that the Livia character was pitched to you. Was that right? By Riley, by Kevin Riley.
Originally, Livia only lived in the past. She wasn't a time traveler. And then December, like you write the pilots and they decide like in January. And I remember it was December and I get this call from Catherine Pope at NBC who says, so Kevin has a note. And okay, so he wants to make the fiance a time traveler. I'm like, oh God, how am I going to do that? Because I turn this thing in 2 weeks. And it was a good note. It was a real good note. And he's super smart. Kevin, I think, was a writer way back in the day. So, of course, he left. But it was not in the original DNA of the show. She was not a time traveler.
And just as Dan is constantly learning things, the structure of this makes it feel as if you're constantly discovering things. What rules did you know from the beginning, and how much were you actually learning things or adjusting things on the fly?
Well, the rules, we were making them up as we went along. It was clear, that was one thing that the network wanted. And I was new to sci-fi, so I just didn't know about rules. But I knew instinctively, well, not instinctively, they had to tell me, and then it became instinct on the other shows I worked on. I knew that after talking to them that audiences want to know the rules. They don't want you to move the line too much. And so we did, Dan, have to kind of like stick to something very early on. And I'm glad we did, because people would have just gotten lost.
Well, I think it's the penultimate episode that's kind of the Ray Bradbury episode where things actually seriously change. How much was that something you wanted to get into more had you gone forward, sort of the butterfly effect kind of ramifications of this?
Well, I think we would have probably delayed that a bit, because once you start doing it, that's when the wheels come off. Because if you think about it too much, yeah, I mean, there is going to be a ripple effect, and you can't just rely. Like in that episode, I think the one Dan's talking about is he comes home and his son has a daughter. He has a daughter, and it's actually one of my favorite episodes in that it was during the strike. So could no longer be on the set, and I could only talk to Kevin socially, and I honored that. And I know you were frustrated, and because you'd call me and go, hey, what's going on here? And I can't talk to you. And how are your kids? That's about it. And
I'd have like script notes going, this part doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and it did,
Kevin. And like this part, like there's something in here that like if we'd had another pass at this, we would have fixed. But because the writers went on strike, we couldn't fix it, and your hands were tied legally. So it was this very frustrating moment, actually.
And the procedural is not the best. What I call the procedural is the story in the past wasn't the best, but what it impacted what was going on in the present. And I know you were telling me you were not happy with the procedural. You could almost see it in your performance in an okay way, because you were supposed to be angry and get all Rome on everybody. But in the present, you said, I think you told me, and you can explain it better, just that you're really saving it more for that. But there's that scene where he comes, and you guys know the show that well. I don't even want to start talking about stuff that's going to bore the hell out of you. Where he sees he has a daughter, and he goes to talk to his wife, and he says, I'm going to fix this. And she's like, you're not going to fix anything. That is my favorite 5 minutes of the series. And I can't take any credit for being there and giving any kind of direction. But I think you almost saved that episode because of the work you guys did in the present.
Well, I'd like to hear some more of that, Kevin.
Of that episode?
Yeah, just about, I guess about sort of what it's like for you when the writer or the showrunner suddenly can no longer be there as a guy.
Yeah, it was really, because there was a lot of firsts for me in this show. I mean, I just moved to America with my family, my young family. I'd never played an American character. I'd never held up a whole an American TV show. I'd only ever worked in Europe up until that point, as in theater and film and ensemble television. So there was a lot of firsts for me. So I was running on empty at this point. I didn't have one scene off the whole time. So by the time the writer's strike hit, I was pretty tired. And I just remember and I remember all the writers outside of the 20th Century Fox lot, like going around, and we'd bring them out craft service. Remember, we'd bring out some food sometimes.
We were picketing outside Fox.
So they'd be picketing, and we'd be on the stages shooting the show. And I think we did actually. I think I came and walked with you on the picket.
You guys all came out and walked with us at least once. Yeah,
and I think we had a sort of this kind of. It was almost like it was almost like out of the Great Escape. Like we're kind of like in Great Escape when they're kind of dropping the earth out of the trousers. Like we were kind of like having these quiet conversations with you, going, well, maybe if I said the line more like this, it might help that moment. And we're kind of like pretending not to be kind of having script conversations.
Just to be clear, Writers Guild of America, I did not give him.
You did not do that. I was trying to get you to engage, but you were very professional.
It was dumb. I will say this: we did sneak on the last episode, Perfridia, the last day of shooting. A couple of the writers, Matt McGinnis, Aidan Babish, and I snuck it. We had to meet outside, a block away from Fox, get into a transpo van, and sneak onto the lot, because we just wanted to be there for that last scene. And we drank a lot. And if you watch the episode and you see McKidd and Moon Bloodgood, at one point they're watching the couple dance before he has the heart attack, and I think you guys were actually really.
Yeah, we were a little drunk. Yeah.
But it was just, I wanted to be there for the last day, and I probably, Writers Guild of America, that probably was something that I wasn't supposed to do, but there was no work done. It was just to say goodbye to everybody.
It was a really sad moment. I mean,
I can't say the crew was excited to see a writer on strike there, that's for sure.
Right, yeah, but there was a lot of ambivalence. But it was a really special show, It was the sadness everybody felt, and I felt like it was all my fault. I remember feeling that way, going. Like,
it was.
Like, America doesn't like me.
No.
America doesn't like me, Kevin. You wrote such a brilliant show, and I went and messed it all up for you.
No, it was not you. And it was. He's not only. He's everything that you see. He's not only a fantastic actor. He's a great human being, and I'll try not to cry. But he poured himself into that show, and if I had to do it all over again, I don't care who you'd give me. I would only do it with Kevin McKidd, because he's amazing. And this is a great reunion that we're having. We're still friends to this day. I still want him to leave Grey's Anatomy so he can do something else with me. But America won't let him.
Now, Kevin, in addition to your first time as an American TV star and all of the dramatic heavy lifting you have to do, rewatching that, I was struck by how much humor there is in this. How hard was that side of the character of Dan?
It wasn't hard, really. I mean, I think what I got from watching this, because it's been a while since I've watched this show, is the chemistry between the actors really, and that's a testament to you guys in the casting department. I think when you have that kind of chemistry, and even with Jessica Chastain, there was this real warmth and sort of camaraderie, and you feel it, I think, and we felt it when we were shooting it. And I think that as soon as you have that spark of you feeling like you're this really strong family, and we were, that humor starts to. I mean, there was some ad-libbed lines like that great scene where Brian Howe, the chief of the newspaper, is screaming at me, and we're walking about, and he steals my cup of tea. And that line where I say that was my cup of tea at the end was ad-libbed, and it was just me and Alex and you going, why don't we do this? So there was a lot of riffing that you allowed, which was nice. I mean, there wasn't a lot of improvisation in the show, but there was definitely a feeling of we can really be. You and Alex let us feel, I think, as a company that we could be at ease to really embody these characters and let our chemistry be up there on the screen. I mean, sometimes when you're in a first season show, everything is kind of micromanaged, and you protected us from that feeling, and I think that helped us feel really easy. I mean, watching this, it feels easy to watch. It doesn't feel like a lot of first season shows. To me, you can see actors everybody's working. There's a lot of work going on to try and make it work. And what I think is a testament to this show is that you can feel this ease and chemistry. And that's solely down to Kevin Falls and Alex Graves, who protected us from the pressure,
Well, you get to end up handed a cast like that. And that cast is amazing. I was looking and going, wow, I worked on that show? I mean, those guys are great. How come I can't get actors like that anymore? But Alex Graves, who really wanted to be here and is doing a movie, and so is Reed Diamond, Alex brought that look to the show. And I worked with him back all the way. I worked on The West Wing, and Alex was there, and Alex was my first choice to direct it, because not only does he know where to put the camera and move it, but he gets those performances. He's a romantic at heart. So if you write something on the page that feels kind of romantic, and I guess I am too, he just takes the next level. But we tried not, and this is learning from Sorkin and all those guys, is you had to walk that line to maudlin, because you could cross it, and then it gets maudlin, and the audience just can sense that. But we managed it, and I think that had to do a lot with Alex and your performances. You guys never went to a place that you felt like you were trying to manipulate somebody. Although when Jessica Chastain was doing that chin thing where she was trying to cry, it's like, my God, she's amazing. Yeah.
I loved it. What I loved watching this was, again, now I'm directing a lot, and so I'm watching
10 episodes, by the way, of Grey's Anatomy.
And watching Alex's, I mean, I was there when we did it, but just watching it again today, there's so many really fantastic developing Steadicam shots throughout this entire episode, that just tell the story so economically and so beautifully and in such a beautifully choreographed way. So,
how many stories did Dan write at the newspaper during the run of the show? Would you guess?
One.
Maybe the world's worst journalist, right? No, he's never there, leaving at the last minute. Probably not a lot. And that's why the newspaper went out of business.
Constantly saying he has these great scoops that nothing ever materializes with any of them.
No, never.
Yeah. I know. Sorry.
But I liked that universe of the newspaper, where basically it was like one employee of a week who would pop up and be the person who would help him in any given week. Talk about sort of creating the world of that newspaper, and sort of that's the dying world of a newspaper. It doesn't even exist anymore, probably. So
that set was amazing at Fox. I was a journalism major, so I kind of love newspapers, and we also felt like, as a reporter, he'd be very inquisitive, and so we wanted that to be the personality. For 5 minutes, we thought about making him a cop, and then it felt like time cop, and just thought, let's just make the guy just have this job where he's a reporter, not just a reporter. I like journalists. Dana Calvo, who was one of the writers, was a journalist, and she was the one who was really kind of the voice behind the woman Gretchen Egoff, who played Katie, who was an ex-journalist. So, and it was we did choose a newspaper that would never have that many employees nowadays. And you watch the newspaper actually has an arc in the season. You know that it's dying, but we purposely chose that because we love that world.
Now I want to make sure that the crowd has a chance to ask questions, but the first, sort of last important question I have to ask is, go over with us the state of the rights for this show and where it stands in terms of DVD, in terms of Hulu, in terms of Netflix, in terms of anything where people could watch it legally today.
If you can find out where you can watch it illegally, tell me. It was
I have
on
a
Hulu.
link for you.
Okay, good. We'll talk. Yes, you can get it at Amazon UK, and it's great. It was very well received. I think this guy had a lot to do with it in Europe and especially England. And they commissioned a DVD with extras. And if you want to like hear all the actors talk, get a lot of behind the scenes footage, interviews with us. It's really great. I mean, that part's great. But the reason is, if you could tell by watching that pilot, the music is very expensive, and the rights here we'd have to like swap it all the music in the States. But for whatever reason, the deal didn't include Europe, so they could play the originals there. So that's the reason why you haven't seen it. Also, the DVD market just bottomed out like 2007. Another reason why the show, by the way, isn't on is that the next year they counted DVR numbers and the +3s and the +7s, which were a significant part of our audience because it was on 10 o'clock on a Monday. Our audience was young, they were smart, they knew how to operate DVRs. So they time shifted that show and we couldn't count it. And if we could, I think we would have survived.
And how about Hulu and Netflix? Since I know it was on Hulu for a while.
Hulu was on for like 5 years, and then like a couple of years ago, I guess it went off, and I don't know. You know what? That's one thing. I think Fox, correct me if I'm wrong, is one of the owners of Hulu. So stern letter to follow. I'm at Fox now. I have a deal, so maybe I'll ask that question.
You should.
I will. Maybe before I forget, speaking of Fox, I don't want to forget this. Lisa Katz, who was the studio executive who developed this, who wanted to be here in the worst way and got sick and could not come. And I know she'll end up watching this interview, but her notes and her development, she got that show from the beginning, along with Jen Salke and others. But Lisa ran point on the show, and I just want to remember her today because she really wanted to be here and she couldn't.
Okay, so anyone, let's start there then.
I guess the question is kind of the bigger picture question. Did you have an overarching or idea on why he was time traveling? Is I think the question of kind of.
Kevin, why don't you take that one?
I can tell you what Kevin told me.
Good, because I can't remember. I have go.
You moved on so fast.
93, so.
No, so basically, what I remember you telling me, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that the powers, the whatever beings or power is giving Dan and Livia this power is actually, it's not really about Dan, it's about his son as an adult, and all the people that Dan has to nudge back in each episode, each procedural storyline that he has to get this person back on their track in their lives, all have to be in a certain place at a certain time to basically kind of save the world and some kind of global.
Yes, but I think
right?
yes, that is true.
That true?
Dan, you're right about that.
Was that not his question?
I think the question was a little bit, I could be wrong. You could have answered it perfectly, by the way. But I think you're right about where we were going to go. The kid was going to be a time traveler.
But it was also the kid and all the people that Dan is fixing,
yes,
right?
Like the Billy Marble character, yeah.
Pyramid, like a
That's
pyramid.
the Rube Goldberg thing I was talking about. We weren't going to answer that question because there's no such thing as time travel. So we always felt like no matter what we came up with, it was going to sound lame. But we just wanted to explore that they're out there. And then I think in the last episode, if you guys remember, that's the thing we learned is that they're out there and they're dying out. And the whole idea for Journeyman was just based on a moment, or when I met my wife, I met her in a cafe in the Hollywood Hills at a place neither one of us ever had lunch at that place except for this one day. And she was only there for like 2 minutes and we kind of met. And I remember like if I would have stopped at a red light, I wouldn't have met her. And I always think that everyone's lives, there's just always a bump that kind of knocks us in to meet somebody. And then because of that, something happens. So I always felt like these time travelers just bumped people. And it was a subtle thing. It wasn't always saving them. They just kind of like knocked people back on track. And that's what we were going to follow. But there wasn't going to be someone pulling the levers because that's where we felt like we couldn't answer it in a satisfying manner.
Sure. That makes sense.
Thank you.
Can you talk about how you write a mythology? So this idea of episode to episode, and did you have a long-term plan? Did you have Postit Notes? What's the method to keep track of the long-term story?
That's a good question. Right now, I'm the showrunner on Minority Report, which is the Spielberg movie that's going to be a TV series in the fall. And we have to answer the question. And that's one thing we're doing, long arcs. We're looking at the season through 11, we're going to do 11 episodes, then we're going to do a back 8. And we are doing it for the reasons that you're talking about, because that lends itself to a mythology that you can kind of plant the flags. Again, getting back to your question, it was harder for this show. And that was a writer 7 years ago who knows a little bit more now. And I think that people, it's good to know where you're going. To be honest, I wrote a pilot. I just wanted it to be on the air. I didn't even think I was going to get on the air. So if you're asking me, like, people like, you know, there was some interview I did, and all the messages were all like, typical, you know, they never know where they're going. You're right, you know? They didn't know where they were going on Lost, but they wrote a great pilot, and you get a great writing staff, and we had a great writing staff, and they started to fashion the season. And that's really, and you know what? You have Post-its. I left Friday, and the writers were working, and there was colored cards on the wall, and there was little Post-its right next to it.
Now, do you get the feeling that 8 years later, and with DVR being something, and binging being a thing, you know, sort of that networks are now aware of and calculating in, are network executives and creatives, are they more amenable, do you think, today to the sort of arcing out that you want to do, as opposed to?
Yeah, not only that, they demand it. You know, they want to know, because it's the difference. Well, Minority Report, you can imagine, there's a lot of scrutiny from, there's like Paramount Television, there's DreamWorks, there's Steven. Everybody like has an opinion. So there's a lot, they're all over us. But now even every show, they're just, because they've lost so much audience. Journeyman's numbers now would have been a hit. We would be on forever with the ratings that we have then now. But that's true of a lot of shows. But yeah, they want to know all that. There were some people back there that question, sorry.
Yep.
I love the show. I was one of the young people that watched it when it aired. I couldn't, it was appointment television for me. I described it to people as Quantum Leap and Early Edition combined. Do you know them? Did they influence you at all when you were creating it?
I didn't watch either show. But the fact that people compared them, and I thought, well, those must be good shows. They're comparing our show. But I did not. But I know those were good shows. By the way, we should have been so lucky to have had the success that Quantum Leap had. And thank you for watching it.
Yes, no, I loved it. I was so sad when it was canceled, and Quantum Leap sort of decided that God was leaping him around. It sounds a little like you're saying the design of humanity is to have some leapers.
Right.
So sounds like that's the answer.
That's what I'm going with. By the way, the last episode, Kevin didn't watch until like a year ago. And he came over to the house, and we
were out for dinner, and he was like, and we got into the subject, and I said, look, we've got to be honest, you know, like it was a really hard moment for me to, you know, it was the first time Rome had been cancelled, but it was an ensemble show, and I don't know, it just felt like a lot of the, I just didn't want to watch the last episode for some reason. And last year we were out for dinner, just the two of us, and I was like, I just haven't watched, I can't bring myself to watch the last one. It's just, you know, I just can't quite pull the trigger on watching it. So you said, look, come to my, so we went and sat in your house, right? And
poured scotch.
Poured a whiskey, and we sat and watched it, and it was a very cathartic moment for me to sit there with you and watch it. It was the right way to do it, I think, for me.
Aw. See, I told you.
Don't you cry, because if you cry, I'm going to cry. And everyone's going to cry.
No wonder we're not on the air.
Anything else? Anyone else out there? I want to know about Find Your Spider. Because obviously you guys didn't want to get into bed with the Googles of the world, but how many different names did you have to test in order to come to that? Because I mean, it's pretty much the third or fourth lead in the show at the end of the day. He's using it 4 or 5 times per episode.
So true. I know one of the writers came up with it, researched it. Maybe it was Aidan Babish, and I think it cleared. You're always, standard practice is always, you run all these names and then they tell you which one's cleared. So that was the one that cleared. I'm sure we had to spell it that way. Oh, I guess because it's Spider, S-P-Y. All right. Did you have a question?
Yeah, what's next for you? Is just Grey's Anatomy, or was you on other things?
Yeah, I did a couple of movies last summer that still haven't come out. Tulip Fever, it's a Tom Stoppard script that Harvey Weinstein's producing, and there was I played a small role in a very famous Scottish novel called Sunset Song, which is about the farming in the early 1900s in the northeast of Scotland, the area of Scotland I'm from. So that comes out, I think, next year. But apart from that, it's, Grey's Anatomy takes up a lot of time. I mean, we do 24 episodes a year, so, it's 9.5 months of the year is used up. So I'm directing a lot. I think I'm directing 4 episodes. I'm directing the season. The next thing really is I start prep to direct the season premiere of Grey's in about, I think, 4 weeks. So I'm back to work in about 4 weeks for that.
Well, did the amount of time required on this, did it lead you to feel like you wanted to do something more ensemble-y when you got back into TV on a regular basis?
Yes.
And yet you've still found yourself looking for new responsibilities on Grey's Anatomy. So
yeah, I think it's the perfect. I mean, I loved the experience I got doing Journeyman. Was I think it made me a better actor. I think it made me a better company member, and it gave me an insight into how this whole thing, how TV really gets put together. And I think that's what made me decide to want to become a director. Working with people like Alex Graves and all the we had some amazing guest directors on Journeyman, Alison Liddy Brown, and so many fantastic who have now all become showrunners in themselves. And so I don't know. I mean, being on an ensemble gives you suddenly some flexibility and some time to actually have a life, because when you're in every scene, you don't have a life, and nobody quite prepared me for that. So I don't know if I would do it again. Because it's very, very taxing. But if it gives your ego a big boost, being honest, and then you go, I can actually survive this much work and do this. I feel proud of that, but it is very, very challenging. But I'm not working down a mine. So it's all.
I think it's time you stop doing brain surgery, getting back to cutting people's heads off.
Through time.
Okay, sure, why not?
There you go.
Yeah. Don't come up here right now and try to cut us off.
Well, Kevin, we live in a world where TV shows don't die anymore. Where even Coach...
Apparently Journeyman has. We can't find it anywhere.
But things get brought back, and they're random things. So NBC's bringing back Coach. Netflix is bringing back Full House. What would be the right way to bring back Journeyman? Would you like to do it as a 2-hour sort of wrap-up movie with all the things that you'd conceived of for the end of the first season? Because, I mean, this guy seems sort of amenable to it.
It took me... I'm going to do it just for you. It took me a long... It sounds really weird, but it took me a long time to get over that. I mean, even like with Kevin, I go, Kev, they're inviting us to do this to cancel too soon category at ATX. It's a great festival. You'll love it. By the way, that's where I live. My idea of success, I'm successful if I'm just canceled too soon. That's the neighborhood I live in. And Kevin, Alex and Reed, they all wanted to come, but they have schedules. Kevin, who had a movie and almost didn't come, and I said, if he doesn't come, I'm not going to come because people are going to be disappointed. But I thought, this is it. I'm just going to let it go. So I feel like I've kind of let go of it. That said, if someone said they wanted to do Journeyman again, I'd be like, let's do it, And I think there would be a way to Kevin couldn't do it anymore because he's too expensive. But
I would give you a
But you'd let it go.
I'd give you a mate rate. I'd give you a mate.
Your mate rate, that's good. But I think it would be, I was thinking about it, I go, you would just be one of those things where I think you would, like, in Perfidia, somebody dies, you would probably die in the first episode. And,
Thanks.
And hand it off to somebody else. Deshaun, thank you, yes. Yeah. Let's pitch this Monday.
His daughter, yeah.
His daughter, yes, his daughter.
The son can take over.
There we go. Well, you're on staff. You know that already. In episode 3.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys all very much for coming in.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Dan. Thank you very much.
I can't believe you're going to kill me off for the first episode.
All right, let's commit then, Kevin. Do you want to do it?
I'll do it.
All right, we're in.
Okay,
gonna do
we're
it.
done.